Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 weeks ago, the government was found for a second time to be in breach of the law over their climate targets. This failure will mean families across the country paying higher energy bills. The court found, and I quote, "The Secretary of State's conclusion that the proposals and policies will enable the carbon budgets to be met was irrational." Now, last time, they claimed their breach of the law was just on a technicality. What's her dog ate my homework excuse this time?
Well, I thank the right honourable gentleman, but let's be absolutely clear. They did not question the policies we've set out, which we've done in more detail than any of our peers. They did not question the progress which we've already made, which is the first G20 country in the world to halve emissions. And they did not question the ambition of our future targets, which again is amongst the most ambitious of our peers. But if he wants to look at what would smother the transition and private investment in this country, he only needs to look at his own mad, unachievable 2030 target.
Ed Miliband.
Mr. Speaker, with a defence like that, you can see why they've lost in court not just once but twice. And buried in the court documents is the confidential memo which reveals the real reason they lost the case. Because officials were telling ministers they had low or very low confidence that fully half of their carbon reductions would actually be achieved. That's why they were found unlawful. So while she comes to the House each month with her complacent nonsense, the court judgment exposes the truth. The government's way off track. It's abysmally failing to meet the climate emergency and pushing up bills for families as a result.
Well, what I've learned in this role, Mr. Speaker, is that he likes to call people who disagree with him names. But the Tony Blair Institute last week said his plans would raise bills and harm our energy security. Are they flat earthers? He also had an industry report last week which said his plans would see up to 100,000 people lose their jobs. Are those people who are worried climate deniers? When will the right honourable gentleman admit his plans are based on fantasy and ideology and they are the last thing that this country needs?
Question 3, Mr. Speaker.
The Minister has repeatedly said today, and her colleagues, that they care about cutting bills for families. But a recent report from the Resolution Foundation found that the poorest households in our country have been hit 6 times harder than the richest by the onshore wind ban. In terms of the share of their household income, they have been forced to pay an additional electricity bills as a result of the total failure to build onshore wind in England. So how on earth can they continue to sit there claiming that they stand up for working families when they continue to block the cheapest form of clean energy there is that could cut bills for families that desperately need help? And will the Secretary of State, before she leaves office, pledge to put this right so that onshore can really be built again and customers can save money on their future bills?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And that just is absolutely not the case. We are proud, we stand here incredibly proudly as a Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, knowing that we have made a commitment. We're doing more than has ever been done on renewables, done more than ever on offshore wind, and actually we've done more to help people with all of their affordability bills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Meeting our net zero targets will be extremely difficult and is eye-wateringly expensive, and it's been enforced on my constituents. Does the Minister agree with me that we must be more honest and open about the enormous costs of net zero on the British taxpayer? And will the Government commit to publishing a detailed analysis on these costs in advance of my Westminster Hall debate?
Well, I thank my right honourable friend, and I would say there is a balance to be struck here, which I believe we are striking, which is to make sure that we can make the most of the jobs and the opportunities of the energy transition, when you know that will support up to 480,000 green jobs in 2030. But yes, when it comes to additional costs, we are taking a measured approach because we want to protect households.
Caroline Lucas.